This is KGW News at 6.
And thank you for joining us now at 6 o'clock. We want to bring you to this dangerous situation that continues on the east side. Police CERT teams now on the ground there, negotiating with a man said to be in crisis who climbed a 300-foot crane.
Yes, such a delicate situation. Our own Mike Benner has been live there all evening near Southeast Ankeny and MLK. So, Mike, any progress at this point?
Yeah, Maggie, that appears to be the case. We're, of course, a block away and hundreds of feet below where this is unfolding. But from our vantage point, it appears that this man in crisis has lowered himself into the cab of the crane, so he's no longer pacing back and forth at the top, which, of course, is exponentially more dangerous. We can tell you as we show you some video here of the scene, and we're not showing you a video of this man out of respect for him and what he's going through. But we can tell you that this all started to unfold just before 2 o'clock, so more than 4 hours ago. This man climbed about 300 feet to the top of this crane. We know that there's a crane operator up there at the time. That person shut down power to the crane and hurried down to safety. But again, this man in crisis has been at the top of this crane for the last 4 hours. We understand that crisis negotiators here on scene know who this man is. They're, of course, communicating with him. They're also talking to his family, trying to get this to the safest possible conclusion. The good thing right now is that it's daylight, and we still have several hours of daylight. So, you know, the time is on the side of first responders. You know, things will really get dicey when it gets dark and if that man is still up there. But for now, plenty of daylight to work with. Something to pass along, though, there are several blocks around this area. Again, this is near Ankeny and Southeast 3rd. The roads out here shut down, so you may want to avoid this area. But we'll, of course, keep our eye on this situation and pass along any new information on air and online. For now, back to you.
All right, Mike Benner, we appreciate the updates. And again, we know this is such a tough situation. We didn't show the visuals of the man or of the crane. If you or someone you know needs help, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is available 24 hours a day. That number is on your screen right there. It's 1-800-273-8255.
And what we know is, quite frankly, is that the Police Bureau has shown that they have no interest in being held accountable by the people that they are sworn to protect and serve.
All right, some moments like this caused some emotions at City Council today. In fact, the meeting got fiery at certain points. There's a vote on the budget for the city of Portland. It's now going to be delayed until tomorrow.
Yeah, and things got especially heated after Commissioner JoAnn Hardesty, who you just heard from there, suggested cutting an entire police unit. That's what she was talking about. KGW's Morgan Romero is live at City Hall with these new developments. Morgan?
Maggie and Dan, commissioners decided not to vote on the proposed budget or proposed amendments today. The agenda was packed and time was limited. As you mentioned, they will continue that vote to tomorrow afternoon. They did stay and listen to all public testimony, which was a mix of emotional comments on parks cuts, as well as what you mentioned, that gun violence reduction unit. The Parks and Rec Bureau is facing the biggest cuts. The department has a $6.3 million budget shortfall, and it's been growing for years. The city is looking at cutting more than 50 jobs and shutting down precious, beloved community centers. Commissioner JoAnn Hardesty is proposing changes to save jobs, calling for a freeze of cost of living increases for certain city employees, including herself and fellow commissioners. She's also pitching reappropriating Portland Police Bureau's vacancy savings and their body camera program. And separately, a contentious proposal getting rid of the police gun violence reduction team. Based on an audit, Hardesty says the gun unit racially profiles people of color, especially African Americans, when making traffic stops, and they can't prove those stops are effective.
I think we have an obligation to make sure that everyone in this community feels safe in their interaction with law enforcement. And if, as Daryl Turner says, we're desperate for patrol officers, these 28 officers being retrained and put into patrol positions makes the most sense to me.
Mayor Wheeler argued Hardesty and Commissioner Chloe Eudaly don't know what the unit does. Police Chief Danielle Outlaw and two higher-ups in the Bureau testified, explaining its purpose and effectiveness in reducing gun violence based on data. They say we're averaging almost a shooting a day in the city of Portland. Assistant Chief Andrew Shearer believes if the team was defunded, there'd be an increase in shootings and decrease in rates of solving those shootings.
Since the implementation of this new gun violence reduction team model in October of 2018, the trend line for shootings in the city has trended downward.
The team used to be called the Gang Enforcement Unit, but has since been changed. They're now not just focusing on gang violence, but on all gun violence. Back to you.
All right, Morgan, something tells me you're going to be back at City Hall tomorrow. Thank you for the report.
Yeah, a bit of foreshadowing there. So Lindsay Nadridge joining us now with another problem that's facing a lot of police departments, which is staffing shortages and the question of what if there's just not enough people to fill those openings?
Yeah, there's a big shortage right now, and actually the number of people applying is down for many agencies, and the number of people qualified to actually do the job is even lower. Last year, roughly 85% of people who applied to be Portland police officers didn't pass the background checks.
It's hard everywhere to hire police officers these days. It's a nationwide problem.
Chris Davis is the assistant chief of the services branch for the Portland Police Bureau. He says there are currently 120 sworn police officer positions that aren't filled.
We're authorized 1,001 sworn police officers, so that your 120 vacancies is about 12% of our sworn staffing. So that's a really big problem.
A really big problem when you consider what that means for officers already on the force.
I think it's frustrating for them. It definitely takes a toll for anybody who has to work that hard and who is that busy.
Officers end up working more overtime, and in many cases, Davis says they find themselves going from call to call just to meet demand.
And what we're seeing is call response times across the board have gone up.
In an emergency situation, the goal is to get there in 5 minutes. But right now, Davis says that doesn't always happen.
Sometimes they're coming from farther away because they've been dispatched out of their district to take another call, and now they have to come back, or they've been dispatched to a district across the precinct because the district officers there are tied up.
And in non-emergency situations,
we hear from our officers all the time that they have to spend the first 5 minutes at the call explaining to that caller why it took them so long to get there because the caller's frustrated.
Okay, so why not just hire more people? It's actually not that easy. The pool of qualified applicants is shrinking. Out of the 1,075 people who applied to be Portland police officers last year, 817 met minimum requirements. From there, only 303 people were sent to background checks. And that's where the pool of eligible candidates got even smaller. Roughly 85% of people didn't pass the background check, leaving only 43 that got hired. Out of that group, 5 didn't make it through the probationary period. So from the original 1,075 people who applied, only 38 people are still employed with the Bureau. On top of all that, fewer people are even applying to be police officers.
You know, we do hear feedback that the job is less attractive to people these days.
At the beginning of April, Daryl Turner, the president of the Portland Police Association, released a statement saying the reason the Police Bureau is experiencing catastrophic staffing shortages, drastically declining recruiting success, and the inability to retain officers is due to one core issue: the intense anti-police sentiment in our city that the city council seems to share. Portland has had its share of anti-police demonstrations.
Portland is a unique environment in which to do this work. We struggle a lot with the narrative that we hear about our organization.
Just tell me what I'm being arrested for!
Davis says he's heard anti-police sentiment his entire career, and sometimes those voices are the loudest. These racist cops have got to go! But not everyone feels that way.
I would push back on the idea that the Portland community doesn't trust its police bureau or that it doesn't value the work that we do. If for no other reason than I hear from people in this community every day how much they value the service of our men and women.
The good economy and low unemployment rate is also working against police departments. Mayor Ted Wheeler addressed that issue while talking about his new budget proposal.
If you're a young person looking at a career path, you can say, well, I could go over here and develop apps and get paid really well and go home at 5:01 p.m. and have my weekends and nobody breathing down my back. Or I can go over here and be in policing and deal with a lot of public scrutiny.
So what's the solution? How do you get more people to go into law enforcement?
We need to get back to the nobility of the profession of policing because it really is rewarding work. And I feel like I know what I'm talking about because I've been doing it for a while, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Officers retiring before there are new people to replace them is also a big issue. Another large group is set to retire in August of 2020. And even if they were to find enough people to hire right now, it takes 18 months to train a new officer, so they wouldn't even be ready in time. So it's going to be a big issue.
Those numbers are still, staggering to me. The number of applicants compared to the number of people who actually become police officers, I had no idea that they were so different.
Yeah, 1,000 down to 38.
We were all yelling, wow.
So
it's huge.
Now,
right?
okay, so we see what Portland is dealing with. Is this unique to Portland? Have you talked to other departments? Are they dealing with the same type of situation?
You know, it's really not. I talked to Vancouver Police, the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, and the Washington County Sheriff's Office, and they say they're all seeing fewer qualified applicants. Vancouver and Washington County have open positions right now, though much fewer than Portland. Their departments are smaller. Clackamas County, though, says all of their positions are filled, so their situation is just a little bit different. But yeah, still a big issue.
Trend.
Yeah.
Lindsay, thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, we'll move on to some developing news right now. Police saying that a sedan crossed the center line. This is on North Greeley near Going Street this morning and crashed into an SUV heading the opposite direction. The driver and the passenger of that sedan both died. The driver of the SUV who was hit survived, and I'm told they're cooperating with police and they were not cited.
And then not far from there, TriMet crews had to clear a Max track after a train hit a car near North Killingsworth. It disrupted the yellow line and the orange line for a while. People had to use shuttle buses to get in between the interstate and the Rose Quarter Max stations. Those routes, we're told, are back to normal tonight.
Portland's Morrison Bridge will be lit orange for the rest of the week. They're honoring an organization that helps families struggling with the loss of a loved one.
Yeah, it's called TP Forever, and it was founded by a local family who experienced a tragedy of their own. KGW's Brittany Falkers has their story.
What a loss this world is to not have him.
On May 21st, 2012, Tony Platt died suddenly in his sleep, a loss that hit his twin brother Chris especially hard.
Just complete shock. We were both 28 years old, healthy, active.
7 years later, the Morrison Bridge is lit in orange as his family has kept his memory alive through the organization TP Forever.
Because that's really a lot of what Tony did. He was just very generous and giving, and we wanted to continue that spirit.
It started with a golf tournament, raising money for a scholarship at Tony's alma mater, Oregon State University, and for the Oregon Humane Society, where Tony was a dedicated volunteer.
It's been really special to be able to celebrate Tony every year and also do so much good work in his honor.
And now, Tony's namesake charity is focused on the Healing Project, inspired by the Platt family's own trip to the coast after Tony's death.
We felt very fortunate to be able to do that, and so we want to set up really a program that's available to everybody to be able to access and have a similar trip on their own.
It's a retreat that gives families who've experienced the death of a family member a place to get away and dedicate time to their loved one and their grief.
We've had several families who have described them just being in survival mode and really not being in a position to be able to dedicate time to their emotions and their grief. And so really having a weekend dedicated to that has been very valuable.
Right now, they host 8 to 10 families a year, but in the next 12 months, they hope to buy their own property and be able to house up to 50 families.
I hope he's proud of all of us, because it's hard to live a life without somebody that amazing.
And the Morrison Bridge will be lit in Tony's OSU orange until Saturday, leading up to a comedy fundraiser that's happening this Saturday at 6:30 at the Lagunitas Community Room, featuring renowned New York comedian Mark Normand. And the Platt family will actually match up to $20,000 in donations now through Saturday. So to learn more or apply for the Healing Project, just head to kgw.com.